So we find this cloud again traveling through the wilderness. They're not into the promised land. They're in the wilderness, being led through the wilderness. God's in the cloud, and they're moving through the wilderness. The cloud is on the move. It's a moving cloud. It walks in the Spirit, it walks by the Spirit, it walks through the Spirit, in truth, in love. It's a different kind of cloud we're talking about here. Moving on further, they finally come into the land. By the time they get to the third king, we've got Saul, we've got David, we get Solomon. By the time we get to Solomon, they're in the land. Everything is settled. Say what you will about Solomon, it's all settled. The temple has been built. 1 Kings chapter 8, verses 10, 11, and 12.
And it came about when the priest came from the holy place that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priest could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon said, "The Lord has said that he would dwell in the thick cloud."
Solomon refers back to Exodus 19 that we just read about the thick cloud. It's the same thing that Hebrews 12 is referring back to. But it's an interesting thing. Just bear with me. I know I'm a little bit, perhaps, a little bit whatever tonight, I don't know. You got all the priests doing their things, right? The priests are doing their thing. The priesthood, the Levites. Because you had to be a Levite to be a priest, right? You had to be born into that tribe. Otherwise you couldn't be a priest. So the priest is doing their whole thing. But what happens when the cloud comes in? Do you remember what Russ just read? Or Russ, you want to read it again?
And it came about when the priest came from the holy place that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priest could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord.
So the glory of the Lord is in the cloud. The priests are doing their thing. The cloud comes in. A faithful cloud of witnesses comes in who live by faith. And the priests fall to the ground. Bam, they can't minister. It makes us go, what? Wait a minute. God was showing us that his plan was never this permanent priestly ministry. That was never his plan. His plan was a cloud of glory. That would be who his people are. I give my glory to none other. I give it to my people. Now I know that we always think in terms of that the priests were doing such a phenomenal job. They had such a hot worship team, great bass player. I mean, they were just like smoking all the current tunes out of, California and the whole thing. And they were so powerful that the presence of God came in. I'm really not trying to be a wise guy. I see that it's almost funny to me. It's almost funny to look at the scenario of this whole thing, and God is saying, but I'm not building a worship team, and I'm not looking for a select few. It's not what this is about. It's about a cloud. It's about a cloud of witnesses. Those who know me, who love me, who know I love them, who I am in. Why do you think by Isaiah 1, he's saying, I'm sick of it. I'm absolutely sick of your songs. I'm sick of your worship services. I'm sick of your worship teams. I'm sick of the whole thing. It makes me want to puke. See, the cloud, when we're talking about worship, the difference between the cloud and those priests on the ground, so to speak, one of the biggest differences, it's a no-name cloud. It's a cloud of witnesses. We came from Hebrews 11, where there's all these little drops that did all these things by faith. But all those little drops are in relationship together as a cloud. As we look around the cloud, it's a no-name cloud. It is in perfect unity and harmony with each other. There's no division at all. There's no division of the priesthood. There's no division of the nation. There's no division. It functions in unity. When Jesus prayed about the glory of God in John 17, that they may be one, that we would get over the tribalism, we would get over all this stuff and be one, because that's where the glory is. And once you see the glory of unity that Jesus prayed about and love, the rest of it can't function anymore. Who wants it? Seriously. Why would you want that when you can be in the glory cloud, so to speak? It's kind of funny, because I've been in church a long time, and I know people who think in terms of, I was in a service a couple of times actually. Did you see kind of like there was like smoke or something hovering over the top of the room? I used to get caught up in that. I got to be honest with you. Really? I didn't see it. Oh yeah, you could see it. You could see like some kind of a mist or something forming in the room. And I could almost feel the pain of God nowadays when I think about it, thinking, but you are my cloud. You are my glory. You are where it's at. You don't have to drag me out of the sky into your room. I'm already there. When you came together, you brought me into the room. You didn't meet in this place to meet with God in this place. God is in you. Internal, not external. It's new. It's spiritual. It's not about religion. It's about our relationship with Him. It's not about the law. He doesn't give a hoot about the law. The only law He cares about is the law of Christ, which is love. A little later on in 1 Kings, you may remember the story with Elijah. Actually, he's back at the mount where Moses was when he has his meltdown. He's absolutely exhausted. Has his meltdown. And he has that still small voice within. You remember that whole scene? But before he has his meltdown, he prays and he keeps asking his servant, do you see anything? Do you see anything? And eventually, his servant sees a small cloud the size of a man's fist. Remember that? And then he has his meltdown and he hears a still small voice within. See, the cloud, it's about worship, but not worship like Old Testament worship with, a special people in a particular place at a particular time, a particular way. It's about life and that cloud moving every day through the wilderness, through the whole thing. There's a lot more that could be said about the cloud in the Old Testament, but as we go into the New Testament, probably the most outstanding thing that we might think of is that the Mount of Transfiguration, when the cloud comes down on the mount, when Jesus takes Peter, James, and John up to the mountain to pray. Jesus meets with Moses and Elijah. Moses represents the law, Elijah represents the prophet, the law and the prophets. Moses died, Elijah was taken. Those who are dead shall rise from the grave, and those who are alive and remain shall all go up. So there's a great representation of a lot of things happening. But as Peter is reverting back to the old, hey, let's build a temple here. And I don't pick on Peter. I think it was kind of like a commendable thing, really. Let's build a tabernacle here. Let's build a tent here, like Moses used to have. Remember that tent? Oh, the good old days. Bring back the glory. Who wants it? Are you kidding me? Why go backwards? But Peter, he doesn't. Let's build a temple here. And it says, while he was yet speaking, the cloud came down. To shut that thing up. Because we're not going backwards. We're not going to the old. We're not going to the external. We're not going back to the natural. We're not going back to religion. We're not going back to the law. We're not going back to death. We're not going back to blindness. We're not going back. We're going forward. We don't know exactly what it looks like. I got to be honest with you, because it's new. It's a new and living way. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I know what the old looks like, and I ain't going back. Not going back. Because God's not in it. He's in the cloud that comes down and says, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. And you may never thought about it this way. But then he adds 3 crucial words. Listen to him. In other words, this is great. Let's read it. Let's get into the Greek, the Hebrew. Let's have a field day. But let's listen to him. Because if I don't hear him through this, I ain't got no use for it. And I'm not trying to be a wise guy, and I'm not trying to be heretical or something. I'm just telling you that if I don't hear him, when the Father in the cloud says, listen to him, I had better listen to him. Listen to him. Don't listen to Joshua. Don't listen to, you can, they're all talking, but you better hear him. Because he's the one who's speaking. Let him who has ears to hear what the Spirit is saying. Because we've entered into a new thing. And if you don't know the Spirit and you're not walking and living by the Spirit, you're not going to hear him. And if you don't hear him, you're going to revert back to the old, the natural, religion. You're going to go backwards. You have no choice. You're going to gravitate towards the thing you know. Instead of moving towards the thing that in many respects is unknown. One of the great mystical books that was written, nobody even knows who wrote it. They don't know who the author is. It's been around 1,000 years. The Cloud of Unknowing. In fact, Lorraine has my copy. I think she's still reading it. She keeps saying, every so often I pick it up, hoping that this time I'll understand it.
That's the title of the book?
Yeah, The Cloud of Unknowing. It's about the cloud. And it has the sense of unknowing because it's new, and it's like the cloud moving through the wilderness. It's like the cloud in the temple. It's like the cloud coming down. There's that dimension of the unknowing until you know. And what do you know that I don't know? It kind of runs in that direction. See, what our biggest problem is, we want the Old Testament. We want to know. I got you sus now, God. Now I know everything about you. Because now I can moan and complain. You didn't do what you were supposed to. When we enter into the unknowing, we actually realize that I know less than a fragment of what there is to know and who I need to know about Christ and about God. Now I can start engaging something in a new and living way. Now I can move on into the new without fear. As we start to get into those things in Hebrews 12, we start to talk about an innumerable company of angels. I think that's one of the cutest little expressions. Because it's like, if you're a Hebrew, and the book is written to the Hebrews, if you're a Hebrew, and it's written to you, and you can list the appearances of the angels, ooh, when the angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar, ooh, when the angels came to Abraham, ooh. And the writer's saying, are you serious? Do you realize where you are now? You know, you're picking them out of these books. Ooh, there was one here. Ooh, there's another one. And he's saying, get with the program. There's innumerable. That means you can't count them. All around. All the time. Hello? It's like finding a shiny penny. Ooh, ooh, and there's $1 billion of pennies around you. At some point it's got to be, are you serious? Because we are into the new. We are into the new. We have not come to something old, to the external, to religion, blind as a bat. No. Christ set us free from all of it. We've come to Mount Zion, which is where we're going to pick it up from next week. You have not come to something old, natural, external religion, a religion of laws and spiritually blind, whatever. That's not what we've come to. We've come to something entirely new. As Mount Zion was to Moses, as Moses and David, as you look at Moses and David, which we'll start looking at next week, that's how different it is now from the old to the new. And if that's not enough to kind of like get our heads like spinning a little bit, he ascends when he left us, what did he ascend in? What are we going back in? I mean, it's just, there's so much there. It's like, how could I not see the role of the cloud throughout the entire Bible and what God's plan is for us? It's like it's there from cover to cover, which is what is so amazing about it. It's hidden in plain sight. Until we see, we don't see. Under the old, we don't see. Once we see it, it's like, oh my goodness. God, I mean, you like seriously got this thing together. You seriously got this thing together. You know what you're doing, what you're forming. And even though he has spoken to us in so many clear, definite ways, because we still like to hold on to the old, we're not alone. It's not a message for 10 people in a room. Because we revert back, which is what I'm going to be talking about next week, because we have a tendency to revert back, we don't move forward. We go backward. So, tonight was just to talk about the cloud a little bit, who the you is, and next week we'll be getting into those verses a bit more, and like I say, the weeks ahead. So that's what I have to say about the cloud.